The lawyer's words hit me like a freight train. Mr. Patterson, I'm sorry to inform you that the DNA test confirms you are not Lily's biological father. I sat frozen in Gerald Whitmore's mahogany-paneled office, the inheritance documents scattered across his desk suddenly meaningless. My Aunt Dorothy had left me $200,000, but there was a catch, a medical screening requirement for all blood relatives who might benefit from her estate. Standard stuff, Gerald had said. Just a formality. Except it wasn't. There must be a mistake, I heard myself say, though my voice sounded distant, hollow. Run it again. Gerald's expression was professionally sympathetic, the kind perfected over decades of delivering bad news. We ran it twice, Kyle. I'm truly sorry. The lab is very thorough with these matters. I stared at the paper in my hands, at the columns of numbers and percentages that reduced my entire world to cold, clinical facts. Probability of paternity, 0%. My daughter, my Lily, my princess, my reason for working 70-hour weeks at the construction firm, wasn't mine. How old is Lily now? Gerald asked gently. 4. She just turned 4 last month. I remembered the party, the princess cake, Lily's gap-toothed smile as she blew out her candles, my wife Amanda beaming beside her, phone in hand, capturing every moment for Instagram. Amanda, my wife of 6 years, my college sweetheart who I'd known for 10. The math was simple, brutal. Amanda had been pregnant when we got married. We'd moved up the wedding date, told everyone we just couldn't wait. I remembered her tears of joy when she showed me the positive test. How nervous I'd been, but how right it felt. We were building a family. Except we weren't. She was. Kyle, I need to ask, did you have any suspicions? Anything that might have… No. The word came out sharp. Nothing. We've been happy. We are happy. But even as I said it, fragments of memory began surfacing. Amanda's weird insistence that Lily looked nothing like me, always laughing it off, saying she was all mommy. The way she'd been oddly resistant to doing one of those ancestry DNA kits last Christmas, claiming they were a privacy risk. Her mother's strange comment at Lily's birthday party. Well, at least we know where she gets those eyes from, followed by an awkward silence. What do you want to do with this information? Gerald asked. What did I want to do? I wanted to rewind time. I wanted this to be a nightmare I could wake up from. I wanted to go back to this morning when my biggest concern was whether we'd get the permits approved for the Riverside project. Instead, I said, I need copies of everything. And Gerald, keep this confidential. I need time to think. He nodded, already gathering documents. Of course. And Kyle? Whatever you decide to do next, document everything. If you're considering your options regarding the marriage, you'll want… I know. I stood up, legs unsteady. I'll be in touch. The drive home was a blur. I lived in Asheville, North Carolina, in a neighborhood where everyone knew everyone, where Amanda had organized the Homeowners Association meetings and hosted book clubs, where I coached Little League and mowed our lawn every Saturday, where we were the Pattersons, the perfect young family. It was 3:30 when I pulled into our driveway. Amanda's white Honda was parked in its usual spot. She'd be inside, probably prepping dinner or working on her laptop. She ran a small social media consulting business from home, something that had grown from a side hustle into actual income over the past year. I sat in my truck, staring at our house. We'd bought it 4 years ago, right after Lily was born. Stretched ourselves thin on the mortgage, but Amanda had insisted. Our daughter deserved a yard, a good school district, a real home. Our daughter. My phone buzzed, a text from Amanda. Hey babe, can you grab milk on the way home? Making mac and cheese tonight, Lily's request. The casual normalcy of it made my stomach turn. I looked at her contact photo, the two of us at the beach last summer, sun-kissed and smiling. She looked so happy. So innocent. Who was the father? The question burned through my mind. Someone I knew? A friend? A coworker? Had it been a one-time thing or an affair? Was it still going on? I thought about Brandon Wells, her high school boyfriend who'd moved back to Asheville 2 years ago. They'd reconnected on Facebook, and he'd come to a few of our barbecues. Tall, dark-haired, with those distinctive green eyes. Lily had green eyes. Amanda and I both had brown eyes. I'd taken high school biology. I knew the odds of two brown-eyed parents having a green-eyed kid were slim. But Amanda had explained it away with talk of recessive genes and her grandmother's hazel eyes. I'd believed her because why wouldn't I? You don't question the woman you love about your child's eye color. What an idiot I'd been. My phone buzzed again. Kyle, you okay? You're usually home by now. I typed back. Got caught up at a meeting. Heading home soon. Need to make a quick stop first. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to the lake, to the spot where I'd proposed to Amanda 7 years ago, where I'd gotten down on one knee and promised to love her forever, to build a life with her, to be the father of her children. One of those things, at least, had been a lie. The truck's engine ticked as it cooled, the only sound besides the gentle lap of water against the shore. I sat there until the sun started its descent, painting the lake in shades of orange and pink that Amanda would have photographed for her Instagram. Everything came back to her. Every thought circled back to the woman I'd built my entire adult life around. My phone buzzed again. Another text from her. Kyle, getting worried. Call me when you can. The heart emoji made my jaw clench. I started the truck and drove, but not toward home. Instead, I found myself pulling into the parking lot of the Buffalo Wild Wings where Amanda and I used to go for date nights before Lily was born. Back when we could still afford to go out. Back when I thought I knew who I was married to. The bartender, a guy named Jeff who'd served us dozens of times, nodded in recognition. Long time, man. Where's the missus? Working late, I said, the lie coming easily. I ordered a beer I didn't want and pulled out my phone. I needed facts. Evidence. The DNA test had shattered my world, but I needed to understand the full picture before I did anything I couldn't take back. My hands shook slightly as I opened Facebook and navigated to Brandon Wells's profile. There he was, smiling in his profile picture with that same easy confidence he'd had in high school. Dark hair, strong jawline, and yes, those green eyes that matched my daughter's exactly. I scrolled through his photos, my stomach churning with each image. There were several recent ones with Amanda and me at backyard barbecues, Lily's 3rd birthday party, a group shot from someone's wedding last fall. I zoomed in on the birthday photo. Brandon was crouched next to Lily, both of them grinning at the camera. The resemblance hit me like a physical blow. How had I never seen it? The shape of her nose, the way her smile tilted slightly higher on the left side, they were carbon copies. You okay, buddy? Jeff asked, refilling a bowl of pretzels I hadn't touched. Yeah, fine. I wasn't fine. I was the opposite of fine. But I kept scrolling, documenting everything. Screenshots of Brandon commenting on Amanda's posts with inside jokes. Photos from a client dinner Amanda had mentioned 6 months ago. Except Brandon was there, and it looked more like a double date than business. Amanda had told me it was her college friend Jessica and Jessica's husband. She'd lied so smoothly I'd never questioned it. How many other lies had I swallowed without tasting the poison? I opened our cell phone account, we shared a family plan, and logged into the detailed usage records. The beer sat forgotten as I scrolled through months of data. Amanda's number appeared constantly, which made sense for a married couple. But Brandon's number showed up with disturbing frequency. Texts at odd hours, calls that lasted 30-40 minutes while I'd been at work sites, trusting her completely. 3 weeks ago, A call at 11:47 p.m. that lasted an hour and 12 minutes. I'd been asleep, exhausted from a double shift. What had they talked about for over an hour while I slept 10 feet away? My phone buzzed. Amanda calling now, not texting. I let it go to voicemail, then immediately played it back. Kyle, you're scaring me. It's almost 7 and you're never this late without calling. Did something happen at the lawyer's office? Please just let me know you're okay. I love you. The concern in her voice sounded so genuine. Maybe she'd missed her calling. She should have been an actress instead of a social media consultant. I pulled up our bank statements next, something I rarely checked since Amanda handled most of the finances. She was better with numbers, she'd always said. More organized. I'd been happy to let her manage it. What an idiot I'd been. There were charges I didn't recognize. Restaurants in parts of town I never went to. A hotel in Charlotte from 8 months ago. The weekend Amanda had supposedly gone to a social media conference. The charge was for 2 nights at a Marriott, but she'd told me it was a Holiday Inn Express and that her company was covering it. I took screenshots of everything, my photographer's eye for detail finally serving a useful purpose. Every piece of evidence got saved to a new cloud folder I created, password protected, backed up 3 times. Another beer? Jeff asked. I looked down. I'd barely touched the first one. No, thanks. I need to head out. The drive home took forever and no time at all. I parked on the street instead of the driveway, sitting in the darkness of the truck cab, watching my house through the windshield. Every light was on. Amanda's silhouette passed by the living room window, phone pressed to her ear. Probably calling my mother, my brother, anyone who might know where I was. The white Honda sat in the driveway, exactly where it had been when I'd left. She hadn't gone looking for me. She'd stayed home with Lily, playing the worried wife, probably rehearsing whatever explanation she'd give when I finally walked through the door. I couldn't do it. Not yet. Not tonight. Instead, I drove to a Holiday Inn near the highway and paid cash for a room. The clerk, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, didn't ask questions when I said I'd forgotten my wallet and couldn't provide a credit card for incidentals. She just shrugged and handed me a keycard. The room smelled like industrial cleaner and old carpet. I sat on the edge of the bed and finally let myself think about Lily. Really think about her. She wasn't mine. Biologically, scientifically, legally. None of it mattered to the part of my heart that had held her in the hospital 2 hours after she was born, that had walked the floors with her at 3 a.m. when she had colic, that had taught her to ride her tricycle last summer. I'd been there for every scraped knee, every bad dream, every triumph and tantrum. But I wasn't her father. The thought made me want to put my fist through the particle board dresser, but I didn't. Instead, I opened my laptop and started a document, a timeline. Everything I could remember from the beginning. We'd been dating for 4 years when Amanda suggested moving up the wedding. We'd planned to wait another year, save more money, but she'd been insistent. Why wait, she'd said. We know we want to spend our lives together. Let's just do it. I'd thought it was romantic, spontaneous. Now I did the math. We'd gotten married in June. Lily had been born the following February. Amanda had told me Lily was premature, born at 36 weeks. The doctors had said everything was fine, that some babies just came early. Except if Lily had been full term, that put conception right around May. A month before our wedding. Amanda had been pregnant at our wedding. She'd known. She'd walked down that aisle in her white dress, smiled at me with tears in her eyes, promised to love and cherish me, all while carrying another man's baby. My phone lit up with another text. This one from my brother Dean. Amanda called. Said you're not answering your phone. Everything okay? I typed back, fine. Needed some space to think. Tell her I'll be home tomorrow. Want to talk about it? Not yet. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally. Okay, I'm here when you're ready. I set the phone face down on the nightstand and returned to my timeline, adding every detail I could remember. The way Amanda had discouraged me from taking paternity leave when Lily was born, saying we needed the money. How she'd never wanted to do one of those Ancestry DNA kits, even when they were on sale and everyone we knew was doing them. Her insistence that Lily looked nothing like me, that she was all Amanda's side of the family. The lies had been there all along. I'd just been too trusting, too in love, too stupidly devoted to see them. By midnight, I had 20 pages of documented evidence, cross-referenced dates, and a clarity that felt like ice water in my veins. I knew what I needed to do next. I needed to find out for certain who Lily's father was. And I needed to do it without Amanda knowing I was digging. The Zamboni circled the ice in lazy, methodical loops, its blade scraping a fresh layer of slush into the collection tank. I watched from the bleachers at Riverside Ice Arena, my breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. It was Tuesday afternoon, public skate time, and the rink was mostly empty except for a handful of kids learning to wobble on rental skates and a few retirees doing slow laps. I'd been coming here for 3 weeks now, ever since I'd moved into the extended stay off Niagara Falls Boulevard. The motel room smelled like industrial cleaner and someone else's cigarettes, but it had a kitchenette and didn't ask questions. More importantly, it was 12 miles from the house I'd shared with Amanda. The Zamboni driver was a woman in her mid-30s named Carla Jennings. I'd learned her name from the staff schedule posted near the rental counter. Dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, buffalo sabres jacket, the kind of weathered face you get from years of early mornings and late nights in ice rinks. She handled the machine with practiced efficiency, cutting perfect arcs across the surface. What she didn't handle with efficiency was her personal life. I'd discovered it by accident 2 weeks ago. The rink had a small office adjacent to the Zamboni garage, separated by a window that looked out onto the ice. During one of my visits, I'd gone to the vending machines near that office and overheard Carla on her phone, her voice carrying through the thin walls. "Can't keep doing this during scheduled resurfacings, Tom. Someone's going to notice when the ice isn't ready on time." Tom. Coach Tom Brennan, who ran the youth hockey program and occasionally helped with the adult league. Married guy, late 40s, with a wife who worked at the VA hospital and 2 teenage sons who played travel hockey. I'd started paying attention after that, started noticing patterns. The resurfacing logs were posted on a clipboard outside the garage. Times, dates, which sessions required ice prep. Standard stuff for rink operations. But there were discrepancies. Sessions that should have taken 15 minutes stretched to 35. Late-night resurfacings that happened when no sessions were scheduled. And always, Coach Brennan's truck in the parking lot during those unexplained overtime hours. 3 nights ago, I'd confirmed it. I'd parked in the far corner of the lot at 10:47 p.m. after the last adult league practice ended. The rink was supposed to close at 11. By 10:55, all the players had cleared out. By 11:10, the front desk staff had locked up and left. Carla's Honda Civic stayed in the lot. So did Brennan's F-150. I'd waited in my truck, the engine off, watching my breath fog the windshield. At 11:43, the Zamboni garage lights had flickered on. Through the small windows, I could see movement. 2 figures. The machine wasn't running. No need for it to be since the rink was closed and tomorrow's sessions were still 12 hours away. At 12:16 a.m., Brennan had emerged from a side door, adjusting his Sabres cap, walking to his truck with the casual confidence of someone who'd done this before. Carla followed 8 minutes later, locking up behind her. I'd photographed both of them, time-stamped. Logged it in the notebook I'd been keeping since Asheville, the same methodical documentation that had become my new normal. Because if Amanda had taught me anything, it was that people lie. They build entire lives on lies, smile while they do it, send you text messages with heart emojis while someone else's DNA runs through your daughter's veins. The Zamboni finished its final loop and disappeared into the garage. The fresh ice gleamed under the overhead lights, smooth and pristine. A couple of teenagers ventured out for the next public skate session, testing the surface with tentative strides. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the photos I'd taken. Brennan's truck, license plate visible, Carla's car. The resurfacing logs I'd photographed when the front desk was distracted. Time-stamped images of the garage lights on at midnight. Nothing explicit, nothing that proved anything definitively, but enough to establish a pattern. Enough to matter to Brennan's wife, Julie. Enough to matter to the rink management, who probably wouldn't appreciate their equipment being used for off-hours activities that had nothing to do with ice maintenance. I wasn't sure yet what I was going to do with the information. Part of me, the part that used to coach Little League and mow the lawn every Saturday and believe that people were fundamentally decent, wanted to walk away. Mind my own business. Let other people's marriages implode on their own timeline. But another part of me, the part that had spent 10 days in an Asheville motel room piecing together evidence of my wife's betrayal, understood something fundamental. People who cheat count on silence. They count on everyone else being too polite, too uncomfortable, too conflict-averse to say anything. Amanda had counted on that. She'd counted on me never questioning Lily's green eyes, never wondering about the rushed wedding date, never checking phone records or credit card statements. She'd counted on my trust, weaponized it, built a life on top of it like a house on a foundation of sand. I wasn't that person anymore. My phone buzzed. A text from Gerald Whitmore, the lawyer handling Aunt Dorothy's estate, and now, apparently, my divorce proceedings. Preliminary response from Amanda's attorney. They're requesting mediation. Also asking about your current residence. Judge may want verification of stable housing if custody becomes contested. Custody. The word still felt like swallowing broken glass. Lily wasn't mine biologically, but I'd been her father for 4 years. Changed her diapers, taught her to ride a tricycle, read her bedtime stories about talking animals and brave princesses. The law was murky on parental rights when paternity was disputed, especially when the mother had committed fraud. Gerald said I had a case. He also said it would be expensive, emotionally devastating, and might end with me having no legal rights to see the little girl I'd raised. I typed back, extended stay, room 247, month-to-month lease. Send them whatever they need. Another buzz, this one from a number I didn't recognize. Is this Kyle? It's Natalie from the construction site. Heard you were dealing with some personal stuff. We miss you, man. Job's here when you're ready. I stared at the message. Natalie was the site supervisor for the commercial project I'd been working before everything fell apart. Good people, fair boss. The kind of crew that didn't ask too many questions when someone needed time off. I'd quit 3 weeks ago. Couldn't focus, couldn't be around people who knew me as the guy with the cute daughter and the pretty wife. Couldn't pretend everything was fine while my entire identity dissolved like salt in water. Thanks. Still figuring things out. Appreciate it. The Zamboni emerged again for another pass. Someone must have requested an extra resurfacing. Carla guided it with the same practiced ease, her face neutral, professional. Just another day at work. Just another married woman making choices that would eventually catch up with her. I stood up, my knees stiff from sitting in the cold bleachers. The rink had become a strange kind of refuge these past weeks. Neutral territory, impersonal, full of strangers who didn't know anything about me. I could sit here for hours watching people skate in circles and nobody cared. But sitting and watching wasn't enough anymore. I walked down to the rental counter, where a bored-looking college kid was organizing skates by size. Hey, I said, you guys sell day passes for the rink? Like unlimited public skate sessions? He glanced up. Yeah, $20, good for a month. I'll take one. I needed to get closer, needed to understand the full scope of what Carla and Brennan were doing, Needed documentation that would hold up if anyone asked questions. Because eventually, someone would ask questions. And when they did, I'd have answers. The public skate session started at 7. I arrived at 6:30, watching from the parking lot as families trickled through the entrance. The Buffalo Ice Arena was a squat concrete building that had seen better decades, its sign missing the B, so it just read Buffalo Ice Arena. Appropriate somehow. Carla's shift started at 6. I'd confirmed that through 3 weeks of observation. She'd arrive in her beat-up Chevy Cavalier, smoke a cigarette by the employee entrance, then disappear inside. Tom Brennan would show up around 6:15 in his Lexus. Coach's salary apparently paid better than Zamboni work, and they'd have maybe 10 minutes alone before the rink opened. 10 minutes for what the maintenance logs called pre-session ice inspection. I'd gotten access to those logs through a stroke of luck. The rink manager, a kid named Danny who couldn't have been more than 22, left his office unlocked during smoke breaks. 3 visits, 3 opportunities to photograph the clipboard hanging by his desk. The logs showed standard resurfacing times, between hockey practices, after figure skating sessions, during the 15-minute breaks in public skate. Except Carla's logs also showed additional resurfacings on Tuesday and Thursday evenings, always between 6 and 6:30. Always initialed by both her and Brennan, the ice hockey coach who had no official reason to be inspecting anything. The double blade pattern I'd noticed wasn't from the Zamboni at all. It was from 2 sets of skate marks, always in the penalty box area, always scraped away before the session started. I'd figured it out last Thursday when I'd arrived early enough to watch through the glass. Carla had driven the Zamboni around the rink once, then parked it. Brennan had met her at the penalty box. They'd talked for maybe 30 seconds before he'd pulled her close, his hands on her waist, her arms around his neck. No kissing. Not where security cameras might catch them. But the body language told the whole story. I'd photographed the logs, documented the timing, noted that Brennan's wife dropped their kids at practice every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, the nights he wasn't at the rink early, the nights Carla worked alone. The pattern was clear. The deception was obvious. And tonight, I was going to make sure Carla knew someone had noticed. I grabbed my skates from the passenger seat. They were old, from high school, but still fit. I'd practiced at a different rink last week, getting my legs back under me, falling on my rear end a few times before muscle memory kicked in. I needed to be steady tonight. Confident. The lobby smelled like stale popcorn and wet rubber. I paid my $12 to a teenager who didn't look up from her phone, then headed to the benches to lace up. The rink was filling with the usual crowd. Parents with wobbly kids, teenagers showing off, a few older folks gliding in careful circles. Carla emerged from the Zamboni Bay at 7 sharp, right on schedule. She wore her work jacket, navy blue with Buffalo Ice Arena staff embroidered on the back, and skated a slow lap around the perimeter, checking for any issues before the session officially started. I stepped onto the ice as she completed her circuit. She didn't notice me at first. Why would she? I was just another skater, another face in the crowd. I fell in behind her, matching her pace, staying about 10 feet back. She hugged the boards, professional and focused, occasionally bending to scrape at a rough patch with her blade. When she reached the penalty box area, I closed the distance. Carla Jennings? She turned, surprised. Up close, she was younger than I'd thought. Maybe 35, with tired eyes and dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. Yeah? Do I know you? No, but I know about your private ice resurfacings. Her expression shifted. Confusion first, then something harder. What are you talking about? I pulled a folded paper from my jacket pocket. One of the log photos printed clearly enough to read. Tuesday and Thursday evenings, 6 to 6:30. You and Coach Brennan, inspecting the ice. I let the words hang there. Funny how those inspections always happen in the penalty box. Funnier still how they're not on the official schedule. The color drained from her face. Who the hell are you? Someone who pays attention. I skated backward, giving her space, keeping my voice low enough that nearby skaters couldn't hear. Someone who wonders what your husband would think about those double blade patterns you keep scraping away. You're insane. But her hands were shaking. She glanced toward the Zamboni bay, probably looking for Brennan, but he was coaching a practice in the adjacent rink. Those logs are routine maintenance. There's nothing. There's everything, I said. 3 weeks of documentation, photos of you two in the penalty box, timestamps matching the logs, your car and his car, both in the lot during those convenient inspection windows. She stared at me, and I saw it. The same look Amanda had given me when I'd finally confronted her. That mixture of fear and calculation, trying to figure out how much I knew, how much I could prove. What do you want? Her voice was barely above a whisper. I want you to know someone's watching. I want you to think about that every time you clock in for a shift. Every time you see Brennan. Every time you go home to your husband and pretend everything's normal. You don't know anything about my life. I know you're a liar. I know you're sneaking around behind someone's back. I know exactly what kind of person that makes you. I skated away before she could respond, leaving her standing there by the penalty box, the folded log photo still in her gloved hand. My heart pounded as I circled the rink, adrenaline coursing through me in a way I hadn't felt since confronting Amanda. This was different, though. This wasn't my marriage. This wasn't my daughter. This was someone else's betrayal, someone else's lies. But it felt good. It felt right. I skated for another 20 minutes watching Carla from across the ice. She'd retreated to the boards, her phone pressed to her ear. Probably calling Brennan. Probably panicking. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I could see her body language. Tense, agitated, glancing around like she expected me to materialize beside her again. When I finally left, I sat in my truck in the parking lot and opened my notebook. The one I'd started keeping after Amanda. Pages and pages of observations, patterns, proof of deception. Amanda's section was full. Carla's was growing. I wrote down tonight's date. Wrote confrontation during public skate and visible panic response. Added a note about her phone call. Then I flipped to a new page and wrote Phase 2 at the top. The revenge wouldn't be simple. It couldn't be. Carla and Brennan had built their little arrangement carefully, hiding it in plain sight behind maintenance logs and coaching schedules. To really expose them, to make them feel what I'd felt, I needed to be just as careful, just as methodical. I thought about Amanda, about how she'd hidden Lily's paternity for 4 years, how she'd smiled and kissed me and built a life on top of a lie, how she'd probably laughed with Brandon about it, about stupid Kyle who worked 70-hour weeks while she played house with another man's child. Carla and Brennan weren't Amanda and Brandon, but they were close enough. And this time, I'd be the one in control. I'd be the one who knew the truth while they stumbled around in their carefully constructed fiction. I started the truck and pulled out of the parking lot, already planning my next move. The ice rink would be open tomorrow. Brennan had practice at 4. Carla's shift started at 5. Plenty of time to prepare. Plenty of time to make sure their perfect little secret started melting away, one carefully documented piece at a time. The hardware store clerk didn't even blink when I bought 40 pounds of rock salt at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday. Just scanned the bags, took my cash, told me to have a nice night. I loaded them into the trunk of my rental car, a beige Camry that blended into every parking lot in Buffalo, and drove back to the extended stay. Carla's shift ended at 11. I'd watched her routine enough times to know she'd lock up the rink office, check the Zamboni fuel gauge one last time, then drive her beat-up Subaru to the house she shared with her husband Derek on Elmwood Avenue. Derek worked nights at the UPS distribution center. Their driveway would be empty. I had the rollerblades in my passenger seat. Black inlines I'd picked up at a thrift store for $12. They fit well enough. At 10:45, I parked 3 houses down from Carla's place. The street was quiet, lined with old maples that dropped shadows across the sidewalks. Her porch light was on. I laced up the rollerblades, tucked the ice pick into my jacket pocket, and waited. Her Subaru pulled in at 11:17. She got out slowly, shoulders hunched against the November cold, and fumbled with her keys at the front door. I gave her 5 minutes to get inside, settle in, maybe pour herself a drink. Then I rolled up her driveway. The concrete was smooth, well-maintained. I circled her house once, the wheels making soft, grinding sounds. Then again, and again. Around and around, a slow orbit that brought me past her kitchen window, her living room, her front door. I could see her inside through the curtains, moving from room to room, probably wondering what that sound was. On my 7th pass, she came to the window, pulled back the curtain, saw me. Her face went white. I waved, kept skating. She disappeared from the window. I heard the deadbolt click, the chain rattle into place. I made 3 more circles before she appeared at the front door, phone in hand. "I'm calling the police," her voice cracked. I stopped directly in front of her porch, pulled out the ice pick. Her eyes went wide. "Relax," I said. "It's not for you." I rolled over to her front steps, wooden, painted gray, and knelt down. Carved a date into the top step. November 3rd. The first time I'd watched her and Brennan in the penalty box. "What are you doing?" She was crying now. "Please, just leave me alone." I moved to the second step, carved another date. November 10th. "Stop it." Third step, November 17th. "These are the days you resurfaced the ice just for him," I said. "The private sessions. Double blade marks in the logs, remember? I counted 14 times in the past 2 months." I stood up, pocketed the ice pick. She was shaking, one hand on the doorframe to steady herself. "I have all the dates," I continued. "All the times you logged equipment maintenance but really just wanted an excuse to meet him. You think your husband won't notice these?" "Derek doesn't. He won't." "Won't what? Won't check the front steps? Won't wonder why there are 14 dates carved into his porch?" I smiled. "Maybe he will. Maybe he won't. But you'll see them every single day." I pushed off, rolled backward down her driveway. She slammed the door so hard the whole frame shook. I skated back to my car, threw the rollerblades in the trunk, and drove to the all-night diner on Delaware Avenue. Ordered coffee and eggs, watched the clock. Phase 2 started at midnight. The ice rink's side entrance was easy. The lock was old, the kind you could slip with a credit card if you knew the angle. I'd practiced 3 times over the past week, timing how long it took to get from the door to the rink floor. 43 seconds. The bags of rock salt were heavy. I dragged them across the rubber flooring, through the equipment room, past the penalty boxes. The rink was dark, except for the emergency exit signs, their red glow reflecting off the ice. I started at center ice, tore open the first bag and spread it in a wide arc, the crystals crunching under my shoes. Then another bag, and another. I worked in sections, creating patches of salt across the entire surface, near the goals, along the boards, in random clusters that would melt through the ice in unpredictable patterns. It took 20 minutes to empty all 40 pounds. I stood back, breathing hard, and admired the work. By morning, the salt would have eaten through the ice in dozens of places, creating weak spots and divots that would make the surface unusable. They'd have to drain the entire rink, resurface from scratch. Weeks of repairs. Maybe longer. But I wasn't done. Brennan's office was on the second floor, overlooking the rink. I'd seen him go in there after practice, watched him through the window as he reviewed game footage and filled out roster sheets. The door was unlocked. Coaches never locked their doors. His skates were in the closet, hanging on a hook next to his whistle and clipboard. Top-of-the-line Bauer Supremes probably cost him $400. I pulled them down, set them on his desk. The battery pack was small, something I'd rigged from a car battery charger and some copper wire. 12 volts, enough to deliver a solid shock but not enough to cause real damage. I opened up the skate's interior padding, ran the wires through the lining, and connected them to the metal blade. Did the same with the second skate. Tucked the battery pack into the toe box where he wouldn't see it until he'd already laced up. The switch was pressure activated. The moment he put weight on the blades, the circuit would complete. I hung the skates back on the hook, exactly as I'd found them, and left his office. The call came at 6:47 a.m. I was back at the extended stay, watching the news with the sound off, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Hello? Is this Kyle Patterson? A woman's voice, professional but strained. Who's asking? This is Janet Woolsey, facility manager at the Buffalo Ice Arena. Your name came up in our security review. We had an incident last night. My pulse stayed steady. What kind of incident? Someone vandalized our ice surface, spread salt across the entire rink. We're looking at 2 weeks minimum for repairs. She paused. We also had a situation with one of our coaches. Equipment tampering. He was injured. That's terrible, I said. But I don't understand why you're calling me. Your name appeared in our visitor logs multiple times over the past month, and one of our employees mentioned you'd been asking questions about maintenance schedules. I'm a hockey fan. I came to watch some games. Mr. Patterson, the police are involved now. If you know anything about what happened. I hung up. Threw the phone in the trash, along with the SIM card I'd been using. Packed my bag in under 5 minutes. The rental car was already paid through the end of the week, cash up front, fake name on the contract. I was 3 blocks away when I saw the police cruiser pull into the extended stay parking lot. The divorce papers came through on a gray Thursday in December. I signed them at a FedEx office in Cleveland, using the notary service they offered for $8. Amanda got the house. I got my freedom and a court order prohibiting contact with Lily until the paternity dispute was resolved. The Buffalo Ice Arena closed for renovations. According to the news article I read online, they were installing a new refrigeration system and completely resurfacing the rink floor. Estimated cost, $75,000. Estimated reopening, late January. Coach Brennan resigned. The article didn't mention the electrical burns on his feet, but I knew. I'd seen the ambulance outside the rink that morning, watched from my car as they wheeled him out on a stretcher. Carla Jennings filed for divorce 2 weeks after I carved those dates into her porch. I found the court records online, public information for anyone who knew where to look. Derek was asking for the house and half her pension. I drove west, away from Buffalo, away from Asheville, away from everything. Stopped in small towns where nobody knew my name. Watched people in diners and grocery stores, wondering which ones were lying, which ones were hiding something. Everyone had secrets. I'd learned that much. The ice rink was closed. Carla's marriage was over. Brennan's coaching career was finished. And me? I was gliding free, untethered, nothing left to lose. The season was over for all of us. The rental car's heater rattled as I crossed into Pennsylvania, the Allegheny Mountains rising dark against the pre-dawn sky. I'd been driving for 6 hours straight, my hands cramped around the steering wheel, the battery pack from Brennan's skates now at the bottom of a rest stop dumpster outside Erie. My burner phone, the third one I'd bought since leaving Asheville, sat in the cup holder, silent. No news alerts about a Buffalo ice rink investigation. No APBs for a man matching my description. The police would be looking, eventually. Someone had probably seen me at the rink, maybe caught on security footage skating those deliberate circles around Carla during public skate. But I'd worn a Bills cap pulled low, Kept my head down except for that one moment when I'd leaned in close and whispered the dates of her secret resurfacing sessions. Her face had gone white as fresh ice. The road signs promised Pittsburgh in 40 miles. I needed to ditch the rental soon, switch to something else. The fake ID I'd used, Robert Fisher, address in Cleveland, would only hold up for so long. The credit card attached to it had a $5,000 limit, pulled from an account I'd opened 3 years ago for emergency funds. Amanda had never known about it. One small secret in a marriage built on lies. I wondered if she'd tried calling. Probably not. The divorce had been finalized 2 weeks before I left for Buffalo, her lawyer pushing through an expedited process while mine argued about paternity rights I'd never actually have. The DNA test results sat in a folder in my motel room back in Buffalo, along with everything else I'd left behind. Let the maid find it. Let someone piece together the story of Kyle Patterson, the man who discovered his daughter wasn't his and decided to burn down someone else's life instead of his own. The sun was rising over the mountains when I pulled into a truck stop outside Pittsburgh. I parked the rental in the back corner, away from the cameras, and sat there watching the morning shift arrive. Truckers in worn Carhartt jackets. A waitress with tired eyes and a coffee-stained apron. Normal people living normal lives, probably hiding their own small betrayals. Late-night texts they shouldn't send. Expenses they couldn't explain. Secret resurfacing sessions on ice that should have stayed frozen. I bought coffee and a newspaper inside, scanning the regional section for any mention of Buffalo. Nothing yet. The sports page had a small article about the Sabres farm team, their practice schedule disrupted by unexpected rink maintenance issues. I almost laughed. 40 pounds of rock salt would take more than a day to fix. They'd have to resurface the entire sheet, maybe replace sections if the salt had eaten through deep enough. Carla would be answering questions by now. Her husband, I'd learned his name from the mail I'd seen through her front window during my third rollerblade surveillance run, would be asking about the dates I'd carved into their porch steps with an ice pick. January 14th, February 3rd, February 28th, March 12th. Each one a private resurfacing session logged in the rink's maintenance records. Times when Carla had been scheduled to work, but the Zamboni had been out on the ice with only her and Coach Brennan inside the building. I'd found the records in an unlocked filing cabinet in the rink manager's office. Breaking in had been easier than I'd expected. A side door with a faulty lock. A security system that only covered the front entrance. The logs had been right there, Carla's handwriting documenting each session. Emergency ice maintenance, she'd written. Coach requested extra ice time for private training. Training. Right. The coffee tasted like burnt rubber, but I drank it anyway, feeling the caffeine sharpen my thoughts. I needed to move. Pittsburgh was too close to Buffalo, too easy to trace if someone started looking. South, maybe. Or west. Somewhere with enough people to disappear into, enough stories to observe from a distance. My phone buzzed. A news alert from a Buffalo station I'd programmed in 2 days ago. Buffalo Ice Arena. Closed. Indefinitely. After vandalism, coach injured in equipment malfunction. I clicked through. The article was brief, careful with details. Extensive damage to ice surface discovered Monday morning. Salt-based substance. Coach Tom Brennan treated at Erie County Medical Center for electrical burns. Police investigating possible connection between incidents. Electrical burns. The wiring I'd rigged into his skate blades must have worked better than I'd planned. I'd only meant to shock him, make him feel a fraction of the jolt I'd felt sitting in Gerald Whitmore's office, learning that my entire life had been built on someone else's lie. But burns meant hospital records, medical reports, evidence that would tie everything together if the police were smart enough to look. I needed to disappear faster. The rental car went back to an airport lot in Pittsburgh. Keys dropped through the return slot at 9:47 a.m. I took a shuttle to the Greyhound station and bought a ticket to Columbus with cash, using a different fake name, James Norton this time. No ID required for bus travel. The station smelled like industrial cleaner and desperation. People sleeping on plastic chairs while they waited for connections to places that probably wouldn't be any better than where they'd left. I fit right in. The bus rolled out at 11:15, half empty on a Tuesday morning. I took a window seat in the back and watched Pennsylvania blur into Ohio, farmland and small towns where people probably still believed their spouses when they said they were working late. Where fathers came home to daughters who had their eyes, their smile, their blood. My phone buzzed again. Another news alert. Buffalo police seek. Person of interest in ice arena. Vandalism. No description yet. Just person of interest. That would change soon. Security footage would be reviewed, enhanced, analyzed. Someone would remember the guy in the Bills cap who'd been at the rink during public skate, who'd confronted the Zamboni driver, who'd skated circles around her like a predator marking territory. I pulled the battery from the phone and dropped both pieces into a trash can at a rest stop outside Youngstown. The SIM card went out the window somewhere past the state line, a tiny piece of plastic disappearing into roadside weeds. In Columbus, I rented a room at a weekly motel off I-71, paying cash for 7 days under the name David Walsh. The clerk didn't ask for ID, didn't care why a man with no luggage wanted a room with a kitchenette and a parking spot around back. I gave her $300 and she gave me a key attached to a plastic diamond keychain. The room was exactly what I'd expected. Cigarette burns on the nightstand, a shower with rust stains, a TV bolted to the dresser that only got basic cable. I lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling, counting the water stains like I used to count Lily's freckles when I'd tuck her in at night. Except she wasn't mine to tuck in. Never had been. The anger that thought triggered was familiar now, comfortable almost. I'd learned to channel it in Buffalo, watching Carla and Brennan's deception unfold through maintenance logs and security schedules. I'd felt powerful for the first time since Gerald Whitmore's office, like I was the one holding the truth instead of being crushed by it. But the power had limits. Brennan was in a hospital. Carla's marriage was probably over. The rink was closed, costing the arena thousands in lost revenue and repairs. And I was in a motel room in Columbus with 3 fake IDs and diminishing cash, no plan beyond staying ahead of whatever investigation was building behind me. I needed to think, to plan, to find the next story that needed exposing. My laptop, bought with cash at a Best Buy in Buffalo, never connected to any network that could trace back to Kyle Patterson, sat in my duffel bag. I pulled it out and connected to the motel's Wi-Fi using a VPN that routed through servers in 3 different countries. The local Columbus news sites loaded slowly. I scanned through them, looking for the kinds of stories that hid bigger truths. A city councilman's sudden resignation, a high school principal taking unexpected leave, a restaurant closing after 20 years with no explanation given. People lied everywhere. They cheated, deceived, built lives on foundations that would crumble if someone just looked close enough, documented carefully enough, pushed hard enough. I could be that someone. The thought settled over me like fresh snow on ice, cold, clean, covering everything that came before. Kyle Patterson was gone, buried under fake names and discarded phones. What remained was something sharper, colder. Something that knew how to watch, how to wait, how to make liars pay for their carefully maintained surfaces. I opened a new document and started typing. Columbus, Day 1. Looking for cracks in the ice. The ice melted eventually. It always does. 3 years after I left Buffalo, I was working under the name Michael Torres at a landscaping company in Tucson, Arizona. The desert heat felt like penance for all those frozen rinks, all those cold calculations. My hands were calloused from trimming hedges and laying sod, my skin permanently tanned from 10-hour days in the sun. I'd stopped looking for other people's lies somewhere around month 18. Stopped carrying notebooks full of documentation. Stopped watching strangers and imagining what secrets they were hiding. The turning point came in a grocery store in Albuquerque. I'd been following a man I suspected was cheating on his wife. Same patterns I'd seen before: unexplained absences, suspicious phone calls. I had my camera ready, my timeline prepared. Then I saw him meet someone in the parking lot. His brother, dying of cancer. The suspicious meetings were chemotherapy appointments the man was driving him to, keeping it secret because his brother didn't want the family to know yet. I'd been so sure, so certain I could see through the surface to the rot beneath. I was wrong. That night, I threw away my notebooks. All of them. The documentation of Carla and Brennan, the timeline of Amanda's deception, the half-finished investigations into strangers whose lives I had no right to dissect. I watched them burn in a barrel behind my motel, pages curling and blackening, all that careful evidence turning to ash. The police never found me. The Buffalo investigation went cold after 6 months. No witnesses, no forensic evidence tying anyone to the vandalism. Brennan recovered from his electrical burns and took a coaching job in Vermont. Carla's divorce was finalized, but according to a news article I'd found before I stopped looking, she'd gone back to school to become a nurse. Amanda remarried. I knew because Gerald Whitmore sent one final email to an address I'd used before disappearing. Brandon Wells was the groom. They had a second daughter together. Lily, who would be 7 now, was the flower girl. The email included a legal notice. My parental rights had been formally terminated. Brandon was adopting Lily. Her last name would change from Patterson to Wells. I'd stared at that email for 3 hours before deleting it. Some ice never refreezes the same way. On my 4th anniversary of leaving Asheville, I called my brother Dean from a payphone outside a gas station in Phoenix. I hadn't spoken to him since the night I'd texted that I needed space. "Kyle?" His voice cracked. "Is that really you?" "Yeah, it's me." "Where are you? Are you okay? We've all been..." "I'm okay," I said, though I wasn't sure that was true. "I just needed to hear your voice." We talked for 20 minutes. He told me about his kids, about Mom's new apartment, about the construction company I'd left behind. He didn't ask where I was or what I'd been doing. Maybe he knew I wouldn't answer. Before we hung up, he said, "Whatever happened, Kyle, whatever you did, you can come home. We'd help you figure it out." "I know," I said. "But I can't. Not yet. Maybe not ever." The landscaping crew I worked with were good people, mostly immigrants, mostly men who'd left something behind to start over. We didn't talk about our pasts. We showed up, did the work, collected our pay in cash, and went home to small apartments where we lived alone. One of them, a man named Javier, invited me to his daughter's quinceañera. I almost said no, but something about the way he asked, hopeful, genuine, made me accept. The party was in a church basement, decorated with pink streamers and balloons. His daughter wore a white dress and danced with her father while everyone watched, crying and clapping. She looked happy, loved, certain of who she was and where she belonged. I left early, unable to watch anymore. The desert taught me things the ice never could. It taught me that some surfaces are exactly what they appear to be: rock and sand and heat, nothing hidden underneath. It taught me that constantly looking for deception means you'll find it even when it isn't there. It taught me that revenge, no matter how carefully planned, doesn't fill the hole left by betrayal. It just makes new holes. I thought about Carla sometimes, wondered if she still thought about those dates carved into her porch steps. I thought about Brennan's burned feet, about the rink I'd destroyed, about all the people affected by my need to make someone, anyone, hurt the way I'd been hurt. They weren't Amanda. They weren't Brandon. They were just people making mistakes, same as everyone, same as me. 5 years after Gerald Whitmore's office, I was sitting in a diner in Flagstaff when a little girl walked past my booth. She had green eyes and dark hair, maybe 8 years old, holding her father's hand while they waited for a table. She wasn't Lily. Couldn't be. Lily was in North Carolina with her real father, living a life I was no longer part of. But for just a second, watching that little girl laugh at something her dad said, I felt it. The weight of what I'd lost. Not the marriage. Not the house or the life I'd built. But those 4 years of bedtime stories and scraped knees and tricycle lessons, those moments when I'd been someone's father, even if biology said otherwise. I'd thrown all of it away, the good with the bad, the love with the lies. The ice had melted, but I was still frozen. I stayed in Arizona, changed my name legally this time. Michael Torres wasn't just a cover anymore, it was who I'd become. Got a better job, a small apartment with a patio where I grew tomatoes, learned to live with silence instead of constantly filling it with investigation and documentation. Some nights I still dreamed about ice rinks, about Carla's face when I confronted her, about the sound of rock salt crunching under my feet, about Brennan's skates hanging on that hook, wired and waiting. I'd wake up sweating despite the air conditioning, the desert heat pressing in through the walls. The revenge had felt righteous in the moment. Justified. Like I was balancing some cosmic scale by exposing other people's deceptions. But scales don't balance that way. You can't fix your own broken foundation by demolishing someone else's house. All you can do is walk away from the rubble and try to build something new, something honest, even if you're building it alone. 7 years later, I received a letter forwarded through 3 different addresses before finally reaching me. The return address was Gerald Whitmore's law office. Inside was a single photograph and a handwritten note. The photo showed Lily, 11 years old now, gap-toothed smile replaced by braces, green eyes bright and happy. She was holding a trophy, wearing a soccer uniform. The note was from Amanda. Kyle, I know I have no right to contact you. I know what I did was unforgivable. But Lily asked about you recently. She remembers you teaching her to ride her bike. She wanted me to tell you she made the All-Star team. I thought you'd want to know she's okay. She's happy. I'm sorry for everything. A. I held that photo for a long time, standing in my small kitchen while the sun set over the desert. Lily looked so much older. So much like the little girl I'd known and so much like a stranger. I thought about writing back. Thought about trying to explain where I'd gone, why I'd disappeared, what I'd done in the years since. But what would I say? That I'd destroyed an ice rink because I couldn't destroy my own pain? That I'd spent years looking for other people's lies because facing my own truth was too hard? That I'd thrown away any chance of being in her life because revenge felt better than healing? I put the photo in a drawer and never responded. Some surfaces, once cracked, can't be repaired. You can resurface them, cover them with fresh ice, pretend they're smooth again. But the fractures remain underneath, waiting to break through. 10 years after Gerald Whitmore's office, I was still in Arizona. Still Michael Torres. Still trimming hedges and laying sod and going home alone to a small apartment with a patio full of tomatoes. I'd stopped running. Stopped looking over my shoulder for police who'd long since moved on to other cases. The ice rink in Buffalo had been rebuilt and reopened. Carla was a registered nurse at a children's hospital. Brennan was coaching high school hockey in Vermont, his feet fully healed. And me? I was learning to live with the truth I'd spent so long running from. You can't skate away from yourself. You can't resurface your own broken foundation by sabotaging someone else's. You can't fill the emptiness left by betrayal with revenge. All you can do is stop. Breathe. Let the ice melt. And try to live with what remains when the surface is finally gone. The desert heat pressed in through my apartment windows as I watered the tomatoes on my patio. Somewhere in North Carolina, a teenage girl I'd once called my daughter was living a life I'd never be part of. Somewhere in Buffalo, people were skating on ice I'd once destroyed. Somewhere in Asheville, Amanda was probably posting photos to Instagram, her perfect life rebuilt on a different foundation. And I was here, alone, accountable for every choice I'd made, every crack I'd created, every surface I'd destroyed trying to ease my own pain. The ice had melted years ago. I was still learning how to stand on solid ground. The truth is simple, even when we spend years running from it. Betrayal doesn't give you the right to betray others. Pain doesn't justify inflicting pain. And revenge, no matter how carefully planned, never fills the hole it promises to close. Some surfaces are meant to melt. Some foundations are meant to crumble. The only question that matters is what you choose to build when the ice is finally gone. I chose wrong. And I'll spend the rest of my life living with that choice. But at least now, finally, I've stopped skating in circles. The season is over. The ice has melted. And I'm learning to walk on ground that's solid, even if I'm walking it alone.